Steve Lawson was found guilty today on 2 counts of conspiracy to commit the murder of Crystal Rogers and tampering with evidence in the case.
A clean sweep from that jury today after 4 days of testimony. The jury believing Lawson helped others plot her murder, and he admitted to helping move her car on the day she disappeared. WHS 11 legal analyst Nick Mudd is joining us to talk about the impact of this verdict. It was during this very newscast last night that you saw Nick say that Steve Lawson should take the stand and testify today, and he did. We're going to get to that first in just a minute, but first, we learned the sentencing from Shane McAllister when we were on the air at 5. 17 years, the recommended sentence. What's your thought on that?
I think the jury thought he was very involved, much more than even we anticipated. Obviously, they didn't give him the full 25, but they had a chance to give from 10 to 25. It sounds like a lot of times what happens is jurors have disagreements and they say, hey, let's meet in the middle. So they really gave him a sentence that's smack dab in the middle.
Was there anything that would make them go in the middle instead of like the full 25? I mean, do you think that maybe they thought, you know, here's a guy who he knows at the time, Brooks Houck is a businessman. You know, he runs all these businesses, and, you know, his brother is a police officer. You know, here's this guy who maybe just got caught up in it, and that's why they gave him the middle and not the full 25?
You never know. A lot of times, penalty is the thing that has the biggest disputes a lot of times in the jury room, and that's the biggest compromises because they can compromise, right? On a guilty of a case, either innocent or guilty. There's no compromise. Penalty, they could go anywhere from 10 to 25. So I do find it ironic. We're literally dead in the middle of the max and the min. And so it seems like a compromise penalty here between the jurors.
When your long career as a prosecutor with the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office and as now with your own law firm, Nick, the Mudd Law Group, this jury deliberated 2 hours and 23 minutes. If I'm a family member of Crystal Rogers and Sherry Ballard, am I happy with 17 years for this first co-conspirator in the murder of my daughter?
I think you are. Certainly, it's a case that could have gone either way. If the jury felt sorry for Stephen Lawson, they could have walked him out the door today on the big charge, the conspiracy. So, you know, we heard lots of testimony, lots of lies that he had stated, different inconsistent stories, lies about things that really, you know, he could have just come clean about. And the fact that, you know, he held a lot of this information in for 10 years. And so, you know, I think that it's got to be at least some side of relief to get that much time. You know, he's not going to get paroled out right away. He's going to serve a significant portion of that. And so obviously there's still the second trial where they're really focused on now after this, but I think the family should be happy with the 17 years.
Back to that 17 years, you said in your experience, only one time did a judge come back and not go with the jury's recommendation?
Right. You know, I've tried, you know, dozens of felony cases, and as a prosecutor and a defense lawyer, and only one time is when I defended a case, and the judge actually, a client was found guilty of a lesser included, and the judge at sentencing went lower because just his circumstance, she felt so bad for him, but really didn't go that much lower. She went, I think, from 7 years to 5 years. But I would anticipate, you know, sentencing will happen in about 6 to 8 weeks for Stephen Lawson. They prepare what's called a pre-sentence investigation report, but usually 99% of the time, Judge Sims is going to go with what the jury recommended.
Well, we were on the air when it happened right at 4 o'clock. And of course, cameras weren't allowed in the courtroom. The judges banned that, but our camera was outside. We saw a tearful stream of family members coming out. We saw the lead detective hugging people aggressively there in the hallway. In the end, was it a mistake to put Steve Lawson on the stand this morning? He was the last witness this morning to testify.
Right, he was, but I still think it was a Hail Mary call. You know, the case after Wednesday did not look good for the defense at all. It looked very guilty given all the stories he had told, the lies he had told, the inconsistencies, and his involvement seemed to be much more than we even initially thought when we heard opening statements on Tuesday. So I think the defense lawyers made a decision to say, hey, at this point you got nothing to lose. Maybe the jury feels sorry for you. Maybe the jury feels sympathy, or maybe the jury sees something that, you know, he could say that could undercut the prosecution's case. Obviously, that didn't happen, but I still think they made the right call. They had to put him up there on the stand, and, you know, ultimately, though, he got convicted.
You said this week that you thought the judge made some interesting moves, and also this case moves so fast. Do you think those two things may open the door for some appeals for Steve Lawson?
The big thing is we've had 400,000 pages of discovery, and we've had 200 hours of interviews. Darren Wolf, the attorney for Stephen Lawson, stated on record, "Judge, I have not had a chance to review everything. I need more time." That in itself, unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on what side you're on, but for Stephen Lawson, I mean, that is appeal issue number one at the very top.
Okay. And what a short trial it was. I mean, Tuesday was the day of bombshells. We heard Lawson accused by one woman of actually committing the murder, and then they talked about co-conspirators. A lot swirling around. Your analysis has been excellent. I want to remind folks that Nick Mudd's going to be joining me on the WHS 11 Plus app at 9:30. We're going to break down today's verdict and the sentencing along with our Shane McAllister and Isaiah Kim Martinez there and covering this trial in Bowling Green. It's a complete debrief of what happened today. That is coming up on the WHS 11 Plus app, so go ahead and download that.